Well, if you don't believe in the book of Revelation or the Bible, you might have to believe after this, because DARPA is up to no good yet again. In fact, they have pulled technology straight from the book of Revelation, the Bible. And I'm talking about Nephilim, Franken kind of fish, to locusts that can be changed and manipulated, which there is some locusts that come out of the book of Revelation, not to mention the fact that there's also obviously technology for the mark of the beast. That's been around for quite some time, but things are getting accelerated at DARPA. And I know there's a lot going on in the news, but I wanted to touch base on this because it's been a while since I have covered anything with DARPA, but you're going to want to hear this entire report. But as a reminder, hit that subscribe button, give mainstream media the big fat friendly middle finger, because they're not telling you the truth. You're getting all kinds of information here, and it's the whole pie. So make sure when you hit that sub button, you go all the way up to the bell. Otherwise, YouTube won't send it to you. And make sure you hit that like button. But let's start first with these Frankenfish, Nephilim modified or modified creatures, right? Let's go to the DARPA website. I'm going to go straight to the horse's mouth for this entire report, right? But DARPA, PALS turns to marine organisms to help monitor strategic waters. Now, this is an article that is back from 2018. And keep in mind, I'm going to go to an article, that is in 2020 after this one, but I got to go back to go forward. But this is their program, and its highly adapted sea life could help U.S. military detect adversary activity over large areas. And here's kind of the idea behind this PALS thing. Sea life, however, offers a potential new advantage. Marine organisms are highly attuned to their surroundings. Their survival depends on it. And a new program out of DARPA's biological technologies offices aim to tap into their natural sensing capabilities to detect and signal when activities of interest occur in strategic waters such as straits and regions. The Persistent Aquatic Living Sensors, that's the name of the program, PALS program, led by programmer manager Lori Adornato, will study natural and modified organisms to determine which ones could best support sensor systems that detect the movement of manned and unmanned underwater vehicles. PALS will investigate marine organisms' responses to the presence of such vehicles and characters, the resulting signals and behaviors, so they can capture, interpret, and be relayed by a network of hardware devices. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Scrolling down a little bit, and this is the most important part of this article. Here's what it says. DARPA favors proposals that employ natural organisms. That's what they hope it is, natural organisms. However, proposers are able to suggest modifications to the extent researchers do propose solutions that would tune organisms' reporting mechanisms. The proposers will be responsible for developing appropriate environmental safeguards to support future development. However, at no point in the PALS program will DARPA test modified organisms outside of contained, biosecure facilities. In other words, what DARPA is saying here, hey, we left the possibility open that researchers might propose some kind of modifications, to tune these organisms' sensing abilities in some way, shape, or form. So, in case they are genetically modified, which we don't want to do, but if we have to do it to try it, then we're going to keep them in contained, biosecure facilities. In other words, these people are literally messing with the DNA of animals, modifying creatures in our freaking ocean. Oh, but they're in a contained area. But you're going to find out later in this broadcast, which I've already done some reports on, they've already released genetically modified creatures like, mosquitoes into public. Didn't ban so well. Doesn't always work out the way that they want. But anyway, we don't know the repercussions that something can have like that on environments. Using them as weapons. I mean, I get it. We need precautions and all of that. But heck, you're talking about messing with God's creation here, which is exactly what the fallen angels did when they had sex with humankind and produced the Nephilim, or AKA giants of the Bible, right? There's a lot of theories that the UFOs, aliens in the sky are messing with DNA. I believe them to be fallen angels, demons, all that kind of thing. And they're definitely messing with DNA. I think that's something that you should not be touching. But hey, let's fast forward to 2020. It seems they're still involved in this program, and this kind of gives you an update of their PALS program enters the second phase. So they've already gone through the entire first phase of it, which you can read it here. It's basically studying their environment, how they respond, observing their behavior, right? And identifying certain creatures that they can use. In the second phase, teams are going to develop man-made detector systems to observe, record, and interpret the organism's responses and transmit analyzed results to remote end users as distilled alerts. Now they're creating their own tech to kind of help aid in this. Complete PALS systems will discriminate between targeted vehicles or other sources of stimuli, such as debris or other marine organisms, to limit the number of false positives, right? So that gives you an idea. They're definitely up and moving on this program. And again, genetically modifying them is obviously not off the table, but in a confined area. Frankenfish. Absolutely terrifying. But hey, in addition to Frankenfish, how about insects that they want to use to carry genetically modified plant viruses so that, these insects can infect the plant and deliver targeted material? Yeah, they're also creating that. Take a look here. Here is their insect allies, obviously also on DARPA. And all these links are going to be on Restricted Republic, by the way. By the way, speaking of Restricted Republic, get there and subscribe right now. I do a lot more conspiracy style stuff that's not so conspiracy over at restrictedrepublic.com. Had to move a lot of it over. I really hope to see you there. It's 14 days for free, so you could try it out without paying anything. But use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. I really hope to see you there. It's a way that you can support us and support what we do and be away from these controlled platforms. So thank you so much for joining in advance, because I know you guys are going to join. But with that, here is the summary of the Insect Allies program. It says, the Insect Allies program is pursuing scalable, readily deployable, and generalizable countermeasures against potential natural and engineered threats to the food supply, with the goals of preserving the U.S. crop system. To develop such countermeasures, Insect Ally performer teams are leveraging a natural and efficient two-step delivery system to transfer modified genes to plants, insects, and the plant viruses they transmit. The program's 3 technical areas are viral manipulation, insect vector optimization, and selective gene therapy in mature plants, layered together to support the goal of rapidly modifying the plant traits without the need for extensive infrastructure. So there's a lot more involved in all of this. So gene editing and the whole 9 yards. But basically, they are using the insects to carry genetically modified plant viruses in some way, and then use it to infect the plant and deliver whatever material they want in it. In fact, they have already been releasing genetically modified mosquitoes. Here's Smithsonian Magazine. Why a U.S. company plans to release 2.4 billion genetically modified mosquitoes. This is a report that I did back in 2020, and I do believe they were released. Oh, and by the way, it's a Bill Gates linked organization. So there you have it. There you have it. Now, the book of Revelation talks about creatures that have been genetically modified. There really is no other way to put it, right? Here's this. And I wrote this back in 2019. What in the world did DARPA just do? Revelation beat locust rising in America. Here is the book of Revelation and what it says. It says, the shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair. Their teeth were like lion's teeth. And they had breastplate like breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions. And they were stinging, and there were stingers in their tails. Their power was to hurt men for 5 months. But only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. That's a crazy looking creature. Face of a man, tail of a scorpion. Sounds like a genetically modified, I don't know what. Hey, but maybe they're already creatures underneath the ground somewhere. Who knows, right? Maybe they're genetically modified and created, but it's really scary, some of the technology that is going on here. And by the way, this little number has a lot to do with it. I've brought this up before, CRISPR, but in today's broadcast, I'm not going to get into it too much. Want to throw it up there in case you want to look into it, but talk about DNA and the sequencing of DNA and all of that. That is the purpose of that. Now, speaking of next generation technology and mark of the beast style stuff, there's a lot of that going on. But I want to go back to this one technology. It's called Prophetic, right? And they have this technology. I reported on it, I don't know, back in probably 2016. Anyway, years ago. Or 2019, probably 2019. Anyway, I'm kind of blanking on that. But anyway, this technology is crazy because it mimics what we could see as the mark of the beast. Again, I reported on this years ago, but I have an update for you regarding that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This is Prophetic. There's a video here that they have put together on their YouTube channel, right? I'm going to play a piece and then I'm going to hit the pause button. Okay.
What if there was a simpler way of knowing how you're doing?
Okay, so they get into this whole thing. What if there's a simple way of knowing how you're doing, to know everything about you? And they keep showing this little thing on the screen. So then we get to this woman here, and I'm going to play this part, and it gives you a suggestion on how you can know things are better.
With the comfort and the warmth of home.
Here it is.
Lumi is transformative science that pairs smart technology on the outside with advanced chemistry on the inside. A single Lumi microsensing fiber provides months of actionable medical-grade data on your body's key biochemistry.
There it is.
Anytime, anywhere.
All right, there you go. So you can see this little technology is already up and running. In fact, here we go, right? And this is on defense1.com, our military website. A military-funded biosensor could be the future of pandemic detection. And they're talking about Prophetic, right? And some of the stuff that I just showed you and some of the things. And then here we have their actual website where they show it and all the information and kind of some of the stuff that they use. And they've got different ones here that they've been messing with and all of that. But basically, Lumi is like the mark of the beast, right? It's you know, what the mark of the beast is, it's an implantable chip that is eventually going to go on your right hand or on your forehead. It's going to have all your information on it, and you can't buy or sell or trade without it. Now, to give you an update on Lumi and what's going on, an investigative study, it's still an investigative study, right? It has not been approved for the United States commercially. Can't sell it, don't have it here. It's not on the market, right? But internationally, right? It's in trials, and they're trying this thing out. And there has been 90 people so far since I did the report back. I'm going to say 2019. Since I did it back in 2019, we're now nearing 2025. About 90 people have been in trials with this thing. It is still undergoing testing as we speak. But we need to have updates on these things. I hate that we report it and then it's years before we even get back to the issue, but that is what's going on. Now, on top of all of it, one little more piece of the puzzle. As you know, Bilderberg's just had their big meeting, right? And here we are after the meeting. And this is the meeting that they had in 2025. They've got all the stuff they're talking about, who's going to be there. And I want you to notice what is on the agenda here. Number one, AI. That would be all of the stuff that we're talking about, technology, AI, these kinds of things. And then at the very bottom, depopulation. That's interesting. And migration. I don't think I've ever seen depopulation actually admitted to at one of the Bilderberg meetings. And this Bilderberg took place June 12th through the 15th of this year. And the participants include all the normals. Interesting. So they had their big event, and one of the topics, depopulation. Seems like the book of Revelation is nearing more and more every day. Anyhow, wanted to bring that all to you. Can't wait to read your comments. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.